it was a done deal, I think,
Yeah,
in everybody's minds that they were a frighteningly good team. And as a relatively new, because the reason we were supporting Wimbledon was my boys, although I'm from Sunderland, my boys wanted to watch a local team. So we were new to Wimbledon, and I was delighted they didn't choose Chelsea or Spurs, because as a Northerner, I would have struggled to support one of the big teams. Um, but Wimbledon was fine because they have the same tradition as Sunderland of battling against the odds and um, being a bit awkward and a bit difficult. So that was fine. And I was worried for my son's state of mind if we went to Wembley and lost. But
Yeah.
as you know, that didn't happen. But I'm jumping ahead. So I think they beat Forest 2-1.
Yeah.
I know Aldridge scored one of them. I can't honestly remember the others. But it was just inevitable. They were going to do the double, which was a relatively rare event when I was younger. I think Spurs did it in '61, and that was an earth-shaking thing to have happened.
Yeah.
It was round about the time Liverpool were dominant, and since then it's become much more commonplace.
yeah. So we go over the page again to look at the other semi-final. I think we're probably more interested in, Erik.
Okay, Tom.
Both semi-finals were played on the same day, Saturday the 9th of April 1988. Liverpool beat Nottingham Forest 2-1 at Hillsborough in front of 51,627 fans. John Aldridge scoring twice in the 12th minute with a penalty, and the 51st minute, and Nigel Clough got Forest goal in the 66th minute. So if we go to pages 4 and 5,
Yep.
and the headline, Don's dream comes true. So Wimbledon beat Luton Town 2-1 at White Hart Lane in front of a crowd of 25,963, and Mick Harford scored first for Luton in 48 minutes. John Fashanu equalised with a penalty on 56 minutes, and the winner came from Dennis Wise on 80 minutes. And so here on these two pages here, there's a couple of photographs of the goals.
I remember, it must be one of the lowest ever crowds for an FA Cup semi-final. Spurs, I don't know what the capacity at the time was, but I guess it was in the 40,000s.
Yeah.
And a crowd of 25,000. I went down to buy tickets for the game at Plough Lane the morning they became available. And I forget the exact details, but let's say they were on sale at 10 o'clock. I got there at 8:30, and I was about 20th in the queue. And that just isn't how it would have been at any of the really big London teams.
Yeah.
But we got tickets. My wife and my two sons, indeed some friends, all went to White Hart Lane for that game. And I think it's worth sort of looking back on who Wimbledon were at the time. They'd only got into the Football League in 1977. And in those days, for the younger listeners, you actually got into the Football League through a voting system. You didn't win a promotion. That didn't follow for some years. And Wimbledon ran a massive campaign, a very successful campaign entitled something like Don's for Division 4. And Workington were the unlucky club to be voted out to let them in. So in 1977, and 10 years later into the First Division, then what became the Premier League, and the season after that, as we'll come to in a little while, winning the FA Cup. It's an astonishing story of a rise from, you can't say from nowhere, they were a very big non-league club, through to Wembley and winning the FA Cup and beating, I don't know, were Liverpool the best team in Europe at the time? They certainly were, if not one of the top 2 or 3. So that's the context of this club with a tiny support that couldn't even sell out White Hart Lane, let alone Wembley, for an FA Cup semi-final against, Luton, who were at the time a much bigger club in many ways, but nonetheless, I suppose, not a massively supported team. No, I remember the game well. It's famous for, and I love this, the game where Bobby Gould actually drove a minivan with the players in and was stopped at the entrance because they wouldn't believe who he and they were, which I think is in a great tradition of up and at 'em and also up yours of Wimbledon and the way they behaved, which I thought a lovely man, Bobby Gould. I met him later, and I thought that was a classic bit of, I think, stage management, really. They didn't need to do that, but they chose to.
Yeah.
And creating a team spirit.
Yeah, it's definitely in line with the image of Wimbledon that everybody sees from the outside, isn't it? It's definitely in line with that. That's a brilliant
Absolutely.
story.
And Wimbledon, I mean, in that particular game, Mick Harford, of course, who went on to manage Wimbledon later, scored, I've forgotten the exact minute, but yes, early in the second half. But Wimbledon had missed several chances in the first half and should have been, if not out of sight, then pretty comfortable by half time. And then they won a penalty, which was I think it was a foul on, no, it was a handball. It was a handball. And Fash took a penalty that's very unfashionable nowadays. I mean, with the Euros going on right now, you've seen a whole range of penalties. The one that won the game for Italy against Spain, if you watched that one,
Yeah.
which the guy just walked up, stuttered, and then strolled the ball into the goalie's left-hand corner of the net, was the Fashanu penalty. And nowadays, I mean, that's unusual, isn't it? Nowadays, you hammer it, you just smash it as hard as you can. But Fash just walked up, strolled up, looked one way, hit it the other, and it was 1-1.
Yeah.
And then the winner came from a classic Wimbledon long throw down the line, hooked into the middle by Alan Cork, and in came, as the picture shows in match, Dennis Wise sliding in to poke it underneath the goalie's body. Struggling to remember the goalkeeper's name, but I think that was the year Luton won the Football League Cup, and that goalie saved a penalty.
So let's just have a look at the teams then. So Luton Town, goalkeepers Andy Dibble.
That's him, Andy Dibble, yeah.
Tim Breaker, Ashley Grimes, Darren McDonough, Steve Foster, Mal Donaghy, Danny Wilson, Brian Steen, Mick Harford, Mark Steen, and Rob Johnson. Quite a strong Luton team, a lot of names that are well known. Yeah,
I mean, the Steen brothers were very successful. Dibble became famous for his penalty save in the league. Mick Harford was a terrifying man, both on and off the pitch, in terms of his physical presence. And they had, but a good footballer too. I mean, not just his physicality. A lot of people, I think, underrate some of the quality of players at the time. It was a very good team, and they were a bit unlucky that day.
Let's have we look at the Wimbledon teams. So Wimbledon teams: Dave Besant in goals. Number 2, John Scales, Terry Phelan, Vinnie Jones, Eric Young, Andy Thorne, Terry Gibson, Alan Cork, John Fashanu, Laurie Sanchez, and Dennis Wise, and Laurie Cunningham come on as a substitute for Terry Gibson.
Yes, Laurie Cunningham of Real Madrid coming on as a substitute for Wimbledon, which strikes me as, even now, and he did the same in the final. If you look at that team, it really was the team that had got into the I'll call it the Premier League, because that's what it is now, was basically Dave Bassett, Harry Bassett's team. And he'd left the previous summer, and Bobby Gould had taken it over. And he brought in, which was his talent, he brought in people like John Scales, who also came on as a sub that day. He didn't start in the final, didn't start the final. I'm pretty sure he got Dennis Wise, who was an unused reserve team player at Southampton. I'm pretty sure he brought him in. And a couple of other, cheap and cheerful buys. The whole team cost next to nothing. Vinnie Jones had come in from Wealdstone. Dave Besant had been, I'll be slaughtered by Wimbledon fans for not knowing this, but I think it was somewhere like Enfield. Went on to play for England. Vinnie Jones went on to play for Wales. Dennis Wise went on to play for England. And although they had a reputation for being hoofball and the position of maximum opportunity approach to football, like get the ball in the area and let it drop, because that's your best chance of winning. Really, there was some good footballers in that team. They're underrated. One of the ones who was the sort that you don't notice unless you're a real football addict or even a particularly thoughtful football person was Laurie Sanchez, who went on to score the winning goal at Wembley. All of these players regard AFC Wimbledon as the natural successor of what happened to Wimbledon. And Laurie came into the sportsman's dinner for us. And he talked about, he scored the winning goal in the cup final. And nowadays you see players interviewed on television and they're saying, they got a hat trick and say, oh no, it's not about my hat trick. It's about the team. It's about the 3 points. And I'm thinking, oh, give it a rest, will you? And your hat trick probably won you £30,000. You love it, the fact that you're the star of the team. And Laurie was one of those guys who was just fantastically honest. He said he scored the winner at Wembley and he didn't want anybody else to score. He wanted to be the guy who'd scored the winner, and he was just praying that, not praying, but he still played to win. But he wanted that attribute. He wanted that accolade. And years later, he can carry it with him. And I thought, how wonderfully honest.
Yeah.
I went to a sports dinner, a charity dinner, where, moving on sideways a bit, they had people who had scored 100 goals in the Premier League. And they were being interviewed or challenged in part by Gary Neville. And God, I got the age where I forget names. The Liverpool centre-back, anyway, who's now a commentator. Anyway.
Carragher?
Yeah. And they said to Carragher, who did you find the most challenging? And they said to Gary Neville, who did you most enjoy playing against? And he said, in a wonderful piece of honesty, I never enjoyed playing. I was so terrified I'd make a mistake that I never really enjoyed playing. A year later, they had Steven Gerrard, and they asked him what he enjoyed most, and he said, I never enjoyed the game till it was over. I think that those insights for me are much more valuable than, it's all about the team, which is just crap.
Yeah.
They've all been through the PR bit, and it's lovely to hear people talking honestly and openly. Similarly, when AFC Wimbledon got promoted into the Football League, we got the stage where there's one penalty left each, and Luton were going first. If they scored, then we needed to score our last one. If they missed, we were up. So I said to our striker, who was going to go on last, did you want him to miss so you didn't have the stress? Or did you want him to score? He said, I wanted him to score. I wanted to score the winner. And again, it's the same sort of message of, let's have some honesty in the game. Let's have people talking about what really happens.
Yeah.
So I've moved quite a distance away from that semi-final day. But going back to the day itself, it was a deserved, if slightly fortunate win. And the next thing was, how on earth do I get cup final tickets for my family?